Hey guys, Owen here, back with another tutorial. In this one we're going to be doing a Java tutorial because of a request from one of my friends, and we're going to be covering the topic of arrays. And I'll be covering the more basic topics in the future. I'm just getting the array one out now because my friend requested it. So if some of the concepts that I'm covering right now seem too advanced and it feels like I haven't covered them in the past, I plan on covering them in the future. So if you look here, the way I have this set up is I have the main method calling a new instance of main, which is essentially this, because if not, then if I tried to make a method, here I'll just maximize that. If I try to make a method like void whatever, now I try to call it in the main method, which is the only place, which is the method that's going to run all the code, and I try to call whatever, it's going to give me an error, and it's going to say non-static method or whatever cannot be referenced from a static context, meaning this method isn't static, which for now in layman's terms means there can only be one of that type of method per class. This method isn't static, so it can't be called from a static context. So then instead of calling all of our non-static methods, what I do is I make a new instance of the main class, and then right here, this is the constructor of the main class, and in the constructor of the main class, we'll call out whatever methods we want. So we can call it whatever here, and we're fine. And so if we were to write sout right there, whatever, and hit enter, it'll be able to call that code. Whereas if you try to put that in the main method, it would not. So I'm going to minimize this and get into explaining arrays. So up here, I'm actually going to make my global array, and an array can be made from any variable type, from an int, from a boolean, from a double. I think even non-primitives allow for arrays, like a string. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're just going to be making one out of an integer. So if I say int list bracket, which specifies it's an array, is equal to new int, and then the size of the array. All right, so before we actually get into kind of coding out an array, let's first talk about what an array really is. So an array is a list of whatever variable type you're making. So let's say the word list is equal to, and then a bracket. Then inside, the way that the kind of syntax that you'd write out a list is like, let's say 0, 20, 40, 102, and we'll end it there. Semicolon. And then so the way it works is arrays are indexed from 0 to however large the array is. So 0 would have the index value of 0, 20 would have the index value of 1, 40 would have the index value of 2, and 102 would have the index value of 3. So in order to actually specify which number from this list that you want to call, you would say list, which is the name of the variable, then a bracket, and then if we called out 1 is referencing this 20 right here. So this right here, if you call list 1, would actually be returning the value of 20. And then list 3, if you wrote list 3 there, would be returning the value of 102. So arrays are essentially lists of data values. And you can have multiple dimensional arrays and stuff like that, but for now we're just going to be talking about a one-dimensional array. So 2D one would look like bop, bop, but we don't want that. So here, you can see we're calling out list 0, list 1, list 3. Let's actually go to 9, which is the largest value in this array. Now we have every single possible value in the array set to a number. So if we were to call system.out. Or in IntelliJ, you can just say sout and hit tab. List, let's say list 8. So list 8 should have been set to this number. List 5 or 4 should have been set to that number. So this seems really tedious, which it is, because no one really writes arrays like that. The majority of the time, arrays are used really well with what you would call a for loop. So for int I is equal to 0. I'm assuming you already know what a for loop is. I is less than list dot length I plus plus list or sout list I. So this will run through every single number in this list and print out its value. You can see. So then why not, instead of writing out all of this, if we want to set to a random number, we could say for int I is, or int, since it's in the same method, you'd have to say int I2 is equal to 0. I2 is less than list dot length I2 plus plus. You could say list of I2 is equal to int math dot random, and then multiply that by like 20. And now you have this for loop initializing the array and this for loop printing it out. So if we run that code, as you can see, we have a bunch of random numbers from 1 to 20. We can set this to like a really big number and we'll have some really big random numbers. So what I like to do is just put these in their own method. So I'd say void init array and then void print array. And you can just copy these over. And then I want to retype this out because I don't want it to be I2, so you'd say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than this dot length, I plus plus, list of I is equal to int math dot random times 20, the lower number. And then just call these two arrays down here. So first we initialize the array and then we print the array. And there you go. So you have one of these that initializes the array and then one of these that prints it out. So generally when working with arrays, for loops are the best way to kind of run through an array, because here, let's just for now have it be equal to I. We'll have it set each value equal to I. So as you can see, I increases from 1 to 9 because it's less than list dot length. Length is 10, less than it'll be 9, and the max capacity of the array is 10. So 0 to 9 is 10. So what this does is I is initially 0, so it sets the first number in the list to 0. Then I is 1, so it sets the second number of the list to 1, then 2, which is array 3, and 3, which is array 4, until it gets to 9. So you can see it goes from 0 to 9, which in the end is the maximum capacity of the array, which is 10. So yeah, for loops I would say are the best way to print out arrays, and then if you're able to use for loops to initialize arrays, that's even better. Another cool way to initialize arrays is to actually say, instead of saying int list brackets is equal to new int bracket and the size of the array, you can actually initialize its initial values when you call it out. So you can say int list is equal to, and then the little squiggly squaggles, and then all the numbers that's equal to. So you could say 3, 4, comma 5, comma 6, comma whatever, and just keep spamming commas. And then when we don't need to initialize the array anymore because this initializes the array for us. When we print it out, it'll print out all those values because this automatically adjusts to the size of the array. So yeah, just another cool way of initializing an array, and I think that's it for the basics of arrays. And then there's some more advanced stuff we can do with arrays, but I'll probably cover that a little bit later. I hope this was relatively helpful, and if you have any other questions or want me to record another video on a slightly different topic, then let me know.